Boom! What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Mograph. As always, my name's Matt, and in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at how we're going to build and create this cool little animation using Midas and After Effects. There's a lot of really cool stuff happening, even cooler than the actual animation and motion, that we should have a lot of fun creating. So let's jump on in and create a new composition here. Actually, let's create a new project. We don't need to be in this one anymore. So I'm not going to save this, I guess, and create a new composition, 1920 by 1080. I'm going to call this first layer our text original layer. So the first thing we're going to do, at least for this example, is to make up a fake company. I think I went with Studio B just because that sounds like a kind of okay-ish fake name. So I'll scale that up a little bit, and we're going to just center this up in our composition as well as the anchor point. So once we have that done, we're going to actually draw a box around it, and this is going to be, for lack of better words, we don't have a logo, so we're going to try to make this look like there's more design happening than there actually is by adding a little line around our studio name. So I'll center up this text again in the composition and with the text below, and this is already looking super legit. Actually, it probably looks closer to like a radio station, but whatever. Maybe Studio B is a radio station. So I'll call this our outlines. And it's going to take a second to build this up, but hopefully it's a lot of fun and should be a good time. So just to make this look even more legit, we're going to add a little name underneath it. So in this case, I think it did Los Angeles, spelled very wrong. But, you know, whatever. It's fake studio. It'll have a fake city. So we'll scale this down a little bit and also change our stroke width just to something a little bit more classy. Something like that will do. Scale it down. And yeah, we are looking legit. I guess we'd also add a little Los Angeles, California. Yeah, so there we go. We got Studio B. It's like this high end. We'll just make up a little story and see what we're trying to go with. But yeah, so like we have this Studio B is kind of like a high end animation house or something, but we want to have like some character with it. So we really want to like take our time to explore these ideas and make like the very best possible animation we can for this company. So there's our design, and also I'll put the project files in the description so you can just download them if you want to either just creep through the project and see how it was built, or yeah, just see anything. So that's looking pretty good. We got it all centered up. What we're first going to do is actually just hide our Los Angeles and our outline and just really focus on this Studio B text. So we want to animate the text, and we're going to do this by going up into our labs here, going to our break tool and clicking letters. And this is going to explode all of our letters up just like this, which is great. And now we're going to do actually a pretty sneaky step that's really helpful. So we're going to first change all of our text colors to something else that doesn't appear in our layer panel already, and duplicate the text. So they're going to duplicate exactly on top of the originals. So on the second set, we're going to go and actually switch the color to, again, something that doesn't appear anywhere else in our timeline. And so this is going to make it so we can go back and forth between the two different layer groups really easy. And so why we duplicated this is because we want individual alpha mats for all of our letters. So I'm going to just add a stroke to the letters that are selected. So these are going to become our alpha mats. And just turn up our stroke width till we actually get almost these letter outlines like this. So we really don't, for the letters like U or D or O or whatever text you have, you don't really want holes in your layers, as you can see right here. You want to just have the stroke just enough to like fill up the shape and make it look kind of nice like this. So once we have that done, we're going to toggle our switches and modes and go on over to this shy button, and then also click this visible button. So we'll turn on our shy all the layers, and we won't see those things. We can just go select our text, our original text here, toggle our switches and modes, and just go to alpha mat. And since we have all of them set up, it's just going to make alpha mats for all of our letters, and they're perfectly like tailored to our letters, and it's not just like a boring square. So next, in order to see what is actually happening, we're going to want to add some animation. So we're going to use Midas for this. So you're going to select the property you want to affect, and then the children that you want to animate. We're going to click Midas and a keyframe, and yeah, we'll just add Midas. let it run, and we're going to get a keyframe. And so just to see what those alphamats have done, I'm just going to pull this S off to the side, and you're going to see that my letters kind of disappear, all of them. So what's cool is I'm just going to play this, and this animation is happening over just about a second, and we're going to have our first start to this Studio B build. So the reason I really like Midas, and I think it's a really good tool, is there's so many different ways of animation you can explore. So just with this first kind of like base, we're going to take this into some really cool places in a really flexible and hopefully a fun manner. So I'll add just a very basic little curve here, and you're going to see that animation carries over to all the children's, and it's looking, this is kind of still a little bit of a standard animation. So we want to make this even more interesting. So in order to do this, we're going to actually go and turn on our dynamics here and turn this frequency down to 50. So the dynamics are kind of like a smart wiggle effect. I'm not going to over-explain stuff, and hopefully it'll start to make sense as you use the tools. But this dynamic effect is kind of like a smart wiggle. So we're going to turn this down to a kind of low number, and you can keyframe any of these properties. So we actually have almost this smart wiggle effect happening with our letters, and then they're also delayed from the original. So we can go to this delay property on our position and turn it up or down or whatever, and experiment with a lot of different things, which we'll get to in a second. But right now we just have this normal 25% relationship with this little wiggle in here. So as you can see, it's kind of started to add just a little bit of extra movement that we didn't really keyframe to our letters. And we've kind of explored this, I think, in one of the live streams, but we're going to take this even farther today. So we first have our, our build on, I guess you would call it, but still, this is kind of a predictable motion. It's really not too exciting. So in order to make this a little bit better, we're going to press E on our keyboard to see our effects, toggle down into the position, and turn on our magnetism. So we have this tool called grab here. So we'll do a grab, and it's going to select all the same properties. And if you turn this on, it's kind of like a bulk enable for all of the properties. So then we're going to select the X and Y intensities and do a grab, press SS to see the selected properties. And these are our magnetisms for all of our different layers. So it's going to look like a lot, at least in this screen. I tried to make my window really, really tiny just so it's like a good resolution. But this shouldn't look nearly as crazy on most other people's monitors. So what we can do with this magnetism is see that they're all set up to 100%. So this is actually telling you like how the relationship is happening from the parent. And with 100%, it's going to be coming 100% of the same direction in animation as its parent. And we can turn these frequencies up or down, or intensities, I should say, up or down to get some cool other kind of relationships. So the other thing we're going to want to probably do is make this, like with any animation, you don't want it to be crazy predictable. And in this way, you can see it comes on just in like a really boring, like you know exactly where it's going. Like the whole animation is going to come on here. But since we're like maybe an animation studio, Studio B, we want to make this more interesting. So we're going to go into our drag here. And what our drag does is it can kind of randomize this delay. So right now, all the children are going to have a 25% delay. And if we enable this, we can set it so it's like -10 to 10. And what this is going to do is say all the children can have like a -10% or a 10% extra relationship based on this random seed. So similar to maybe something in like Cinema 4D, the values are kind of being like randomized or scattered between the children. And so these are smart. You can keyframe them, but we're basically setting up this little range that we want this frequency of the parent to be based off of. So I can still keyframe this, and our seed is kind of just sits on top, and it gives you a bunch of different like looks at the animation and timing wise. So I can just toggle through here, and even when an animation is playing, I can start to see all the other different like variations within that like easing that we've created. I can also turn this up or keyframe it more, but I think this is just a great way to kind of just experiment quickly and just start to see like really what your animation could be doing, or just give you some ideas for what else you want to be doing with your animation. So I'm pretty happy with how this looks. It's kind of nice. It doesn't seem predictable. It's a little bit fun. It's really wonderful. So we are going to set a keyframe on our delay, and this is going to also make our animation more interesting if we end up using it. So the first thing we want to do is, I guess, go back to these magnetisms that we pulled up for all of our different letters. Now that we have a little bit more of the animation we want these letters to like really look interesting. So for example, I have this D coming on here, but I just don't like it. So I'm going to click it. And as you can see, the D is selected and I have these intensities. So the first thing I want to do is just make this D kind of stand out. I want it to come from the other direction. So I'll turn my X intensity to -165. And you're going to see now when the animation plays, I'm actually coming in from the right side instead of from the left. So if I was to turn this value higher, it's from the left, 100% of the parent looks just like the S does. Or if I set it to like this negative value, it's -200% of what the parent's animation is. So we're going to do this for all of our different layers and just kind of, this is, again, we don't want this to look the same. And with Midas, what's really great is your animation is like guaranteed to always look original, and it like no one can really ever have the same kind of look, which I think is nice. It just makes things a little bit more interesting. So we'll turn up all these values and just start to see what we kind of build with this. So for this B, I guess this one, I want to have like a lot of intensity, and that's actually terrible. So this takes a little bit just to like play around and see what you like. You can always go back to your randoms and play around with that more. But I just want to start building up kind of this brand identity that's kind of like fun, playful, a little bit unique, and totally different from maybe another studio. So this is definitely looking different from another studio. And that is so far going nice. So I think I'm starting to dig this. We're not going to go too crazy with it because we don't want to waste too much time. But maybe on this T, I want this to actually come from the bottom and also not have any of that X. So it just kind of pulls up just like this. Cool. Maybe I'll turn this intensity down. But working with these kind of alpha mats that we set up is also really, really nice because it keeps all your mats and alphas really nice and easy to use and work with. So okay, we're going to pretend this is like exactly what we want. You can, even once you've set up your magnetisms, you can still go back to your drag seeds and just toggle through them for more variations. And we can also go into scatter if you wanted to, but we'll talk about that in some other future video. So I'm going to go back to that 14.8 that I had. That was just perfect. And this is the animation that I've built really quick. So I'll press U on my keyboard. I'm going to set another keyframe on my mount and then return up this value to something higher. And you're going to see that this kind of smart wiggle is pushed to our children in the same kind of magnetized relationship, just like this. So this is going to work best when you have other keyframes also happening. So we will set a keyframe on our position and just kind of animate this guy out of here, just like this. And actually, we'll just have a linear keyframe. So I just pulled up the pen tool and clicked it so we didn't have the Bezier handles. And just check out how this is looking. Not too bad. We definitely need to be moving more and faster. So we'll pull that over here and up. And you can see, so in this example, my B is kind of sticking around. So for however our random seed got pushed out, you're going to see that this probably got a higher value, so like 9. So it might be have a delay of 19%. So we can turn this value down, or we can go and click the B individually and just give it a little extra delay or more delay just to kind of catch up with the others independently. So we want that to already be on. So we'll just give it a little bit negative of its parented delay. And there we go, Studio B, and still is dragging behind everyone. So we'll maybe make that -14 there. And these values are always going to be different for what the animation is you're doing. So we now have the start of something that I think is looking pretty sweet. This looks like a pretty legit animation house. If you didn't want if you wanted this to be like perfectly in line and to not go to this kind of staggered look, that's from this dynamics amount. So we can set this to 0, and you're going to see it's going to all snap equally and kind of lock in place before it moves. So that looks good. Why don't we go and start moving on to some other stuff like this. Actually, what we're going to do is just grab all of our text layers that we kind of like broke and just do Shift-Command-C to put it into a pre-comp. And I'm going to call this like my base animation. And so what this is just going to do is make it so our timeline and layers stay a little bit cleaner, and now we know exactly what is what. So there we go. We got this animation. We have this other comp now that we want to add our other things to. So I'm going to go and click my outlines, and we definitely want this to build on when our animation does. So we're going to go to our labs and just add the trim, toggle down into the trim paths and set some keyframes. We're going to do something really interesting, at least what I think is pretty interesting, by using the Spectre or Animo Spectre to read out this animation for us. So I'm going to turn, that probably sounds crazy, but you'll see in a second. So we'll turn these values down, maybe add a little bit of offset. And if I just play this is probably going to be a pretty nasty animation. Not good at all. But we're going to let this animation be interpreted by our animation we already built. So I've got this first little bit here. And why don't we also add this really cool kind of adjustment to the base animation. Yeah, so we'll add an adjustment layer here. And I'm going to call this like my effects. We're going to go up into our effects and presets and grab the optics compensation, just like this, and drop this guy onto our effects layer. I'm going to turn on this reverse lens distortion and just crank this super, super high. And you're going to see we're starting to get some warp on our letters, which is great. We'll set a keyframe here, press U to see our active keyframes, go back in time and turn this down to 0. So we're kind of doing the same thing we just did with this trim path, where it's kind of, we have the keys we want. We don't really want to have to time those out, but we want it all to look like really cohesive and nice together. So we'll just select all these keyframes, go click Animo, click a key, and we're going to call this our reader. So when we have this reader, we can toggle down into our Spectre, click Enable, and then select our trigger layer, which is going to be our base animation. And I'm going to turn like the size of this null up. And so what this basically does, as you can see, like when I now go over my base animation, we're starting to get the animation that we just designed. What we want to do is just scale this up, and you're going to see we're getting a read into our output. So this is basically taking the surface area of the null and minusing the layer or trigger that we've added to it to give you a percentage, which then gets interpreted into your Animo animation. So I'm going to turn up the multiplier here until we get something closer to 100%. So in this case, we have to go up to... it doesn't even have to be perfect. It can also be over. It doesn't matter. We're going to go to 3.8 in this example. And so I actually need to switch these optic compensation keyframes. I'm just going to move this back because when we have the text in here, we don't want to be all distorted. So what this is going to do is take these keyframes and based on our animation showing up in this null is going to animate these keyframes we set up. So we literally don't even have to worry about these anymore, or even the reader for that example. The animation is just going to build itself based off the other value. So now when I go like page down one at a time, you're going to see that all the timing is kind of synced up. We're going to mess with this a little bit more to make it look even nicer, but you're going to see that it's like all attached. Even the effect is timed out with our text layers arriving in here. So I'm going to turn up this value a little bit higher. We definitely want to, since we have the trim path, hit 100%. And you're going to see what's really cool is as the animation is being built on, the optic compensation, for example, is like being smartly applied to our animation. And so what this basically does is create a very organic and natural way to animate, because it's like all your animations kind of timed out to itself using itself. And I think it just starts to look really smooth and just like I don't know. I think it's a very clever and fun way to animate. So let's finish this off. We are 19 minutes in, and I'm sure half the people are asleep. So we're going to click this Los Angeles, California, and we're going to again go and do a break and again into letters. This could be a total nightmare to animate, just because it's a lot of work. But once again, we're going to use Midas to make this really easy. We know that we have all these letters to animate, so we're going to go to our Midas, set a keyframe, a comp, and a guide. So we get a duplicate of the parent, and everything else gets pushed into a comp because we want to set an alpha mat. So I'm going to call this second text, add a little composition here. So we have our controller, and we have our text here. I'll add a... rectangle right over this text. like this. Maybe actually make it solid so we can get a good alpha map. Turn the stroke on. I'll call this my alpha and put this above our text children layer, which I can call as like my second text. We're going to go on over to our little mat here and set this to an alpha. And you're going to see that our Los Angeles, California is visible. And we don't want it to be visible. So we're going to just turn this value down. And you're going to see that all of our text is now hidden. Add some easing to our layer here. And let's see what we get. So it's going to obviously not be timed out. And this might be another opportunity just to like get our stuff synced up together by pushing these keyframes into our reader as well. So why don't we do that? We'll select our keyframes. We're going to select our AC reader. And so what's nice about this reader is you can always attach other like keyframes to your tools just by selecting the keyframes and the layer you'd like, and then seeing. So on this layer, we have our reader control. If we had other controls on this layer, you could attach them to that. But we'll select our keyframes, our reader layer, click Animo. We don't need any keyframes, and we're going to just type in reader, which is what we want to attach our keyframes to. And you're going to see that they've been attached. We get the expression, and now when I play this animation, you're going to see that it's starting to build on correctly. So one of the things with Midas, obviously, is we are going to be having this delay amount in here. So I'm going to turn this value down a bit to maybe like 4. And we're going to probably end up with, you know, that like a little bit of that boring kind of, you know, exactly what's coming with the animation. So we're probably going to take this to the next level, or try to, I should say. Also, I am previewing this at like full res, which is probably not recommended. You would want to be at like half if you're doing any work, but I didn't want to have like a blurry monitor. So there we go. It's kind of starting to look nice. Maybe turn this value up a little bit. You could add just some range values to this text. And what's cool is even though our like base text is keyframes are being pushed to the children, they're also being pushed into a delay system. So even though you're reading out the value using Spectre, there's still going to be like this designed relationship that you kind of made. So I'm starting to not like this. I think especially when you're showing a city that maybe we do want that kind of predictable look. So I'll just turn off my drag. And you're going to see that they snap back to their normal values. So what's great again about this is if we're using this read, I only needed to set the 2 keyframes, and they're just going to automate themselves now as the Spectre gets read. So now that my text is leaving the null object, my text at the bottom is also animating out, and so is my trim, and my optic compensation is being turned on. So, you know, with just a little bit of keyframes, I think, let's see how many we ended up using. It's kind of weird. I almost don't count these as keyframes. I didn't time them out. I just added like values, and then I'm letting it all be read by the work we did do on this set of keyframes. So this is kind of all the work we did. And then these are just like setting up our parameters, and it's reading and figuring it out itself. So if we want to do one more like kind of look to this and make it look even more hip, we'll drop our text original into another new composition. Maybe trim this down just so it's not so extreme. And we'll go to our layer styles. Actually, that's probably not such a good look. We'll add a drop shadow just here. The layer styles drop shadow for some reason also has noise in it, which is actually kind of nice, but it's a little bit slower effect. So we're going to turn our distance up, maybe change this to some cool green color. That's pretty terrible, actually. That's not a cool green color at all. You know, there we go. It looks very Los Angeles, which I guess is what we were going for. And there we go. So yeah, this is basically like how I would use Midas and all these tools together just to like quickly go through some cool designs and start building out something that kind of responds to itself and works with itself. And I have to say, like, there's almost something you can't put a finger on it. Like everything, the timing just feels, and in my opinion, a lot of, maybe not for this one exactly, but the timing always feels like just right. And that's because like the animation's building itself. So yeah, I think it's just a fun way to animate. I'm going to wait for this to preview, and then I'm going to say adios. And as you can see, Los Angelos spelled wrong. Definitely not a place. So don't go to Studio B trying to get any work, because that place does not exist. And let's just wait for this little read to happen. Preview what we have. And let's see. Yeah, so I just really like how this all looks together. I think it looks just kind of fun. Like it has a little bit of its own life, which is something that is kind of hard to do with animation. Just to like make it all feel connected and really good and smooth. So yeah, if you're interested in checking out Midas, there's a free 7-day trial and all that. But it's one of my favorite things ever. So I really like it. So anyway, here is our animation where it animates on. It looks really cool and hip, and it animates out really smooth. And you can even see that in this text at the bottom here, there's like some cool little like readjustments as the easing or like the text comes in and out. It's actually going like up and down through the values. So you kind of get like this just really cool connected thing that would be a total pain to keyframe individually. So anyway, thanks for checking out Mount Mograph. As always, my name's Matt, and catch you next time. Peace out.